Yo, what is up? It is your boy Zether, back at it again with part 2 to What If Deku was Mael's reincarnation. On the last part, we had essentially left off with Deku pretty much taking the entrance exams and growing up in a very different way. This time, he was actually kind of popular, grew up being friends with Bakugo, and Bakugo ended up getting one for all. That being said, we're going to jump right back into the story right after where I had left off. So, after Deku ended up destroying all of the robots, he would essentially go off home with Bakugo, as they would essentially just be waiting for about 1 week for their letters to come in. As, you know, Deku and Bakugo would just straight be chilling, Sorry about that. Honestly, as, you know, Deku and Bakugo would just be hanging out together as, you know, out of nowhere, they finally get their letters as Deku would text Bakugo to come over, as Bakugo would take his letter and come over to Deku's house. As they would then open them simultaneously, getting told that they're going to be in 1A and that they both actually ended up getting some, oh no, Deku did that himself, so Bakugo actually wouldn't get that. So Deku's told that he actually ended up getting some rescue points, and Bakugo's a little jealous that Deku actually ended up getting all that many more points. But, you know, what can he say? That's his best friend. So they would essentially just smirk at each other, knowing that they're going to go to school the very next week. So Deku and Bakugo would proceed to train and hype themselves up for what's to come, as All Might would essentially be on a hiatus, since we all know what happened with All Might having to do some paperwork or whatever it was. As, you know, Deku and Bakugo would proceed to just be hanging out during that week, you know, just taking it easy, training a little bit, and the day would finally come. Deku would wake up as he then tells his mom that he's going to go off to school, as she would say, okay, well, go ahead and become a great hero, as, you know, Deku would say, will do, mom, as he grabs a piece of bread and just runs off eating it. So, Deku would then have his wings come out, as, I actually forgot to mention this, but since Deku is an archangel, he's actually going to have 4 wings, so he doesn't have 1, he has 4. It's kind of like Mael's. So, Deku would take them all out, as he would then proceed to fly off to school, as Deku would land in a sort of, you know, Avengers hero pose, like, BAM! Just landing on the floor, as, you know, he would land right next to Bakugo. It just barely got there, as Bakugo would say, why are you showing off so early off? As Deku would say, I was just excited to get here. So Bakugo would say, well, understandable. So they would then walk inside, and after this, Deku and Bakugo would just be chilling, as Bakugo is just sitting on the desk, as well as, you know, Deku, they're just sitting on top of them, as Ida then walks in and says, you ruffians, how dare you disrespect UA school property, don't sit on that, as, you know, Deku would then look straight at Ida, as Ida would say, he would stop what he's doing and forget what the hell was happening, as, you know, everybody in the class would finally notice that Deku was there, as, you know, they would see some kid with grown-ass wings. I mean, Deku had just gotten there for like, I kind of messed myself over there, didn't I? Redcon, I'm sorry, guys. So, Deku and Bakugo would arrive, right? They would arrive to class, and as soon as Deku walks in, all of the girls in the class, as well as guys, would proceed to stare at Deku, who has this angelic presence over him, as they would all just, like, feel calm. You know, they would feel at peace, as all of the girls in 1A would just proceed to feel like heartthrobs, like they want this man Deku. Like, they look at him and they're like, okay, what's going on? As, you know, Deku and Bakugo would just be sitting there talking, as Ida would arrive and do his usual shtick, just like I said. But as soon as he looks at him, he just feels calm. He doesn't feel the need to bother him or be keeping up with all of his little lousy rules. So Deku and Bakugo would just be left alone, as Ida says, sorry for earlier, my name is Tenny Ida, as he would then stick out his hand saying, well, as, you know, Deku would then say, oh, my name is Izuku Midori, nice to meet you. As, you know, they would get to know each other, and Bakugo would just be like, this kid was over here coming to annoy us just a second ago, what made you change your mind so fast? As Ida would say, oh, right, I was just coming to tell you guys that you guys shouldn't sit on the UA desk. I mean, you are kind of disrespecting UA property. As Deku would put his hand over Ida's shoulder and say, chillax, man, it's not a big deal. I mean, it's just desks. So Ida would just be like, I guess so. So they would just be talking a little bit, as Uraraka would then arrive and say, oh, you're that one kid who saved me. Thank you so much. As Deku would say, oh, yeah, it was no problem, really. As that is happening, Aizawa would wake up and say, if you're here to make friends, I suggest you leave now. We don't have time for that, and we only have 3 years to mold you into the perfect heroes. So Deku would just look at Aizawa and say, alright. As Uraraka would ask about orientation, that would be happening as normal. They would then go into the fitting room. I'm kind of tired. Kaminari would then look at Deku as he sees how ripped this guy is without a shirt. As, Deku would then proceed to be like, I got like this. I mean, I've always kind of been blessed with, in terms of, physical appearance. I mean, for some reason, I didn't ever have to really work out much. And I was pretty much handed this. As Kaminari would say, what? You're lucky. As Kirishima would say, that's manly. As Deku would say, I still work out though, because, I gotta stay in shape. As Kirishima would say, that's admirable. You're manly. As, they would just be talking a little bit and they would head outside. So, Aizawa would throw the ball at Deku, telling him to throw it. Slow ass car. Anyways, as Deku would proceed to grab the ball and use his sunshine ability to then grab the ball, but right as he's about to throw it, the ball would melt in Deku's palms. As Deku would say, could I get another ball? Or maybe a rock? As Aizawa would say, are you sure about that, kid? As Deku would say, yeah, I'm positive. As Deku would go up and grab a pretty decent sized boulder, as he then activates One for All. As he then riles his hand back and says, ah! As he throws the ball as far as he can, getting about infinity. He threw the ball into outer space, and he shows them the score he got. He got infinity, with everything else essentially going to canon. Deku would ace the rest of the physical tests, and the race, don't even get me started on the race. Deku would blitz that with his, wings, as he would just flap them once, and Deku would essentially be at the finish line. That was nothing to him. He would shatter the grip strength test, and everything else would just be light work for Deku. So Bakugo would end up getting second place, Momo third, and the rest going to canon. So that being said, Deku and Bakugo did pretty amazing this time, as he and Bakugo would decide that, they're going to go off to train, as Aizawa would then stop Deku and say, hey, what was that? As Deku would say, oh, my quirk, it's called Archangel. As, I'm pretty sure that's what I said, Archangel, yeah. Or it's called Angel's Grace. Angel's Grace, or Divine Angel's Grace, I'm pretty sure I said. Something like that, I don't know. Angel's Grace, I'm pretty sure, right? So he would say, oh, yeah, it's my quirk, Angel's Grace. As Aizawa would then say that he had actually tried to turn off his quirk when he was using it. As, Deku would then say, what? Why would you do that? As Aizawa would then say, I wanted to see how far you could throw without it. As Deku would say, oh. As Aizawa would then say, but when I tried it, it was nothing. It didn't even have a quirk. Like it was as if I couldn't turn it off. As Aizawa would then say, is your quirk a sort of mutation? As Deku would say, oh yeah, it actually is. As Aizawa was then like, oh, understandable. As Deku would then proceed to be like, yeah. As Aizawa would then let Deku go off, but he would then just be wondering, like, is that kid truly divine? He felt all of his worries, his tiredness, everything just go away when Deku looked at him. As Deku would then walk back and say, hey, one more thing. As he would then hold Aizawa's chest, as he would then heal him, as Aizawa would just feel rejuvenated. He would feel like all of his stamina, all of the, tiredness that he had just been washed away. As Aizawa then has his mood change a little bit, as he would then smile for, a brief moment. As Deku would say, well, I'm off. As he would say, I figured, you wanted to get some rest, and, to stop you from wasting any of your precious time, I decided I'd help you out a little bit. As Aizawa would thank him, and Deku would go off with Bakugo to train a little bit. So, we're going to go ahead and skip to the next day, where, they're going to get their stuff. As, All Might would bust in the door saying that he is here. As Deku would say, All Might, hey, as everybody in the class would be like, what? What do you mean All Might, hey? This is the #1 hero. Come on. As All Might would say, it's okay. I'm an acquaintance with Midoriya. With Mael, sorry. What was I gonna say? As Deku would say, yeah, we know each other. As well as Bakugo, right, Kachan? As Bakugo would say, don't call me that. As, they would just be like, yeah. As, they would then, proceed to be like, wow, that's awesome. They would then say that All Might actually trained them. And everybody in the class would be like, that's incredible. You guys were trained by the symbol of peace? No wonder you guys are so powerful. As Todoroki would hear that and be like, huh. It doesn't matter. I'll still be able to crush them. As they would then put on their hero suits. And Deku's hero suit is actually going to be Mael's... excuse me, guys. Sorry about that. As Deku's hero costume is actually going to be Mael's angel outfit. So, That being said, that's handled pretty easily. And in terms of Bakugo's costume, it will actually remain the same, except this time it's going to be way more fire, and the color scheme is going to change a little bit to make it a little more appealing in my eyes. So, that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump right into the teams. So Deku's team would consist of Deku and Bakugo versus Todoroki and Tokiyami. So Tokiyami would ask Todoroki what the plan is. As Todoroki would say that he's not sure, but he wants to test how strong these guys are. As you know, he would then look towards the direction. As you know, Bakugo and Deku would just be smiling as they're just talking to each other. Be like, yeah, this is gonna be pretty easy. As Deku would say, no doubt. So Todoroki would walk inside and instantly freeze the entire building, telling Tokiyami that he should actually just go to a different room since he's gonna freeze the top half of the place. As Tokiyami would understand, as he would go to the bottom floors, waiting for Deku and Bakugo to appear. As soon as they appear, Deku and Bakugo would see Tokiyami there as he has Dark Shadow out. As Bakugo would light up an explosion as he could see that Dark Shadow was actually hiding. As Bakugo would say, no way. Your Quirk's weakness is light, isn't it? As Dark Shadow would hide a little bit, as Bakugo would then rush in there with a big explosion, knocking Tokiyami out and taking Dark Shadow out in the process. As Bakugo would say, as Mael would say, that he didn't actually have to go that hard on him. As Bakugo would say, yeah, you're right, I just wanted to cut loose a little bit. As Mael would actually understand a little bit, saying that, I get it. As he would then proceed to walk up. As they get to the higher floors, they would notice that it actually gets colder. As Bakugo would say, this is not exactly the best conditions for my Quirk, Deku. As Deku would say, oh yeah, gotcha. As Deku would have his sunshine just flaring out of his body as the entire building just begins to heat up and the ice just starts to melt. With every step, Deku starts melting the floors. Deku just takes one step closer to the door and he opens it, breaking the door off, saying that they're here for everything. As Todoroki would be like, he would try to shoot ice at him, but it wouldn't work. No ice would even be able to come out. As the second it comes out, it would just melt and turn into water. As Todoroki would say, what the? As Bakugo would then rush at Todoroki, hitting him with a howitzer impact, a small one at that, as Todoroki would be taken out and crash into the wall, as he would then hit back onto the floor and get knocked out. As Bakugo would then smile, saying that was kind of boring. As, Mael would actually say that, I guess, as they would proceed to just touch the bomb and win. Afterwards, everything would kind of be a little boring, with them both going home and training a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and skip about 1 week to the future. As after 1 week had passed, they'd actually be informed about the USJ. As everybody would proceed to go off to the USJ, it's going to be pretty fun. They're going to do a little bit of rescue training and, what can go wrong? So they proceed to all head off to the bus as Suyu begins to talk about who the strongest in the class is. She says that Bakugo must be because he was able to take them both out with relative ease. And Todoroki getting that high of a score on the Quirk assessment, I mean, he had to be impressive. As Todoroki would just be looking at Deku, who was the real threat. He sees him as the strongest and wants to catch up, makes his eyes colder. Maybe even use his flames against him, as he then thinks, no, I'll never use those damned flames. As Deku then just starts thinking that, it's almost noon. As, he looks at the sky and it's almost about 12 o'clock. So Deku's power is rapidly increasing at this point. It's about 11 something at this point. As they would proceed to arrive, as 13 would give her amazing hero speech. By amazing, I mean awful. As, they would all be listening and Deku and Bakugo would just be sitting there as they're like, yeah, I guess. So they walk inside as Kurogiri would then appear saying that, where's All Might? As everybody would just stare at him. As Kurogiri would then look towards Deku's direction as Deku would then say, purge! As he would then be right in front of Kurogiri, touching his metal piece. As he would then purge Kurogiri. As Kurogiri would then fall onto the floor. As out of nowhere, manga spoilers coming, manga spoilers coming, manga spoilers coming. If you guys don't want the manga to be spoiled, skip about 20 seconds ahead. Actually, no, I'd actually suggest not even watching the video, honestly. But that being said, I gave you guys this warning and I'm going to go ahead and get right back. So after Deku would have said purge, Kurogiri would have turned into Shirakumo as he would then fall onto the ground and his blue hair would just be flaring in the wind with the clouds. As Aizawa would then say, Shirakumo, is that you? as Aizawa would have run over there to grab his friend as he holds his head, as he opens his eyes and says, Aizawa, is that you? As Aizawa would then say, you're alive? As he would say, what was that form? As Deku would then fly down and say, that seems to be his ability. He seemed to have been mutated and, turned into something that he isn't. They seem to have been experimented on him. As Aizawa would thank Deku for what he did. As Deku would then say that there's bigger matters at hand, that right now they gotta focus on this. As Shirokuma would then get up and rub his head saying, I guess I'll help. Would be nice to be back in action. As Shirokuma would actually be healed. I mean, he's back! It's Shirokuma! As, Aizawa and Shirokuma would get into a battle stance as they run in there and start mauling down on the villains. As Deku would have actually ran in there and taken down villains left and right using Archangel and everything else that he had in his disposal. As he would have just been going around taking down as many villains as possible. As, wow, these cars really do be loud. So, Deku would proceed to rush in there. As after he's done, it would be about 2 minutes, and he had actually taken down almost 200 villains in a matter of, 1 minute. Come on now. This is Mael we're talking about. What you mean? So, Deku would have actually ended up taking out a couple of villains, and after that, he would then step to the main boss, as he would then say, you better get out of here. Or no, he would not say you better get out of here. He's not Goku, what the hell? Anyways, he would then say, well, I guess it's time to bring you in. As Shigaraki would say, damn you! As he would then rush at Deku, and he would try to decay him, but Deku would dodge his attack. As out of nowhere, he would punch Shigaraki in the gut, knocking him down. As Shigaraki would just hold his stomach as he would say, Namu, attack that brat! As he would then cough out some blood. As Deku and the Nomu would stare down at each other. As Deku would then proceed to rush at the Nomu, but the Nomu was fast. As he punches Deku in the face. As Deku tanks it straight to the jaw. As his face doesn't move. As that Nomu would have messed up. It was now noon and Deku had turned into the One. As his body would have increased in mass. As he would have then became a giant with solar energy just flaring off of him. As everything would change. In one word, Deku would hold his hand out to the Nomu as he would then say, Purge! As the Nomu would then die instantly. The Nomu would be nothing more and it would turn to nothingness. As the heroes would then approach Deku, but they would feel that the temperature was rising quickly. As Deku would then rush towards the lake. As he would then sit there as the lake would begin to evaporate. As everybody would just be watching at Deku's raw power. He took out the Nomu in an instant. As, afterwards, Aizawa would then walk up to Deku, but his clothes would start melting as Aizawa would jump back. And Deku would say, you guys are going to have to stay back for about a minute. I'm going to need to cool down. As everybody would stay down as Deku would just remain there for about 30 minutes as he had then cooled down and his power was then suppressed. Deku could, store up some energy over time. And at this point, it had been about 15 years. So Deku definitely has a plethora of energy to use in case his sun isn't out. So, that being said, afterwards Aizawa walks up to him with Shirokuma by his side as he then asks Deku what he did. As Deku would say that he purged the evil out of him, as well as healed him back to his normal state. As Shirokuma would then hug Deku and say that he's so thankful. He didn't think that he was ever going to be back as he has recollection of everything that had happened. He knows where the League of Villains are and everything else. As during this time, a black portal would have appeared and actually saved Shigaraki. He would have been saved, and after this, Shigaraki would have just been sitting there saying, Master, there was a boy. He looked like an angel. He was too strong. As All For One would say, I understand, Shigaraki. I saw. That boy was definitely powerful. It seems we're going to need to go into hiding for a bit. You, as well as any of your League of Villains members, are going to have to switch locations since that old bar no longer going to be useful. That Kurogiri was turned back to normal, you say? He may have the certain information to take us down. As they would then move off their bases as quick as possible, taking anything and everything that they can scavenge. As they would then take all of the Nomus and all of the ones that weren't finished, they would all just be destroyed. As Dr. Ujiko would be extremely angry, but there's nothing he could do. So this is when Deku would proceed to be talking to Aizawa, as Aizawa would actually have an extreme amount of liking towards Deku, and this is when President Mike would have arrived at the scene, seeing Shikumo looking old as he says, how are you? As he says that he doesn't know himself, but he's just glad to be back. As, they would all have an amazing moment, thinking that they could finally open that agency they always wanted. So, Aizawa, President Mike, and Shirakumo would proceed to open a new agency. As Aizawa's character would just have a brand new light to him. He would feel happier, and Shirakumo would be happy seeing that Aizawa always kept those goggles he gave him. So, this is where we're going to be ending part 2 of What If Deku Was Mael's Reincarnation. If you guys enjoyed this, guys, make sure to drop 200 likes for the next part to be dropping tomorrow. But with that being said, it has been your boy Zether, and I am out.